Hey, thanks for joining me once again for the Third Eye of Providence Fool's Journey series. We are on the Suit of Swords. So, for this episode, I'll be reviewing the Ace of Swords through the Ten of Swords. And in the next episode, we'll review the court cards. So, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button. You get the notification when I post my videos. And if you hit the like button, that's super appreciated. It helps other people see this content. And thank you guys for checking it out. So let's get into it. Now we have the Ace of Swords. And feel free to pause the video if you want to have time to review the symbolism on the card. The Two of Swords. The Three of Swords. The Four of Swords. We have the Five of Swords. There it goes. The Six of Swords. The Seven of Swords. The Eight of Swords. The Nine of Swords. And lastly, we have the Ten of Swords. Okay. So I'm going to get into the description here from the Complete Book of Tarot, Comprehensive Guide by Anthony Lewis, regarding the Suit of the Swords. So it says, the tarot swords were originally the scimitars of the Egyptian Mamluk playing card deck. With their curved blades, the relatively lightweight scimitars were the preferred weapon for battles on horseback. These soldiers found that the curved blade of the scimitar was the ideal shape for slashing their enemies from atop a moving horse. Straight blades, in contrast, tended to get stuck in the enemy's body, causing a delay while the warrior had to pull the sword straight from the wounded opponent's chest. It's no surprise, then, that the phallic swords, the scimitars, became symbols of conflict, strife, and devastation. In astrology, the Suit of Swords is related to the Yang group of the active air signs. This would be Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, as befits the thrusting phallic nature of the incisive swords. To get a sense of the nature of this tarot symbol, we have some keywords here to keep in mind when dealing with the Suit of Swords. So we're going to see this as representing of quarrels and action, legal matters, words as weapons, confrontations, communications, clearing the air, matters of the mind. It's about analysis, it's about intellect, it's about decision making, strategy. Sometimes it can be about strife and suffering and scandal and loss. Might also represent piercing quickly, jumping into the fray, and it has some kind of representation with sickness, bloodletting, and clearing dead wood. So cutting energy, for sure, with the swords. Also about making decisions, also about, justice and logic and truth. All these energies that we've associated with Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius as well. Interesting. So there's going to be even more, when it's in the reverse, it will be talking about sadness and conflict and separation, worry, death, double-edged words, grief, and debate. Very interesting. So let's get into the Ace of Swords. And like we said in previous episodes, which if you have not gone back to check those out, make sure you're hitting the save button on the playlist so that way you can watch them at your own speed. But again, like we've talked about in other episodes, aces are all about the start. It's the numerology of 1, right? So we have a spark, a creation, a new life, and a beginning. Now with the Ace of Swords, keep in mind the swords energy is all about thinking and thoughts and actions, we're going to have this card symbolizing invoking intense force for decisive action. Beautiful. So when this card appears upright, the Ace of Swords suggests new beginnings related to principled thinking and effective communication. You're able to focus your mind, see things clearly, and cut through confusion, invoke intense force, and put matters into perspective. With the courage of your convictions, you cut through the crap, and you don't suffer fools gladly. Swords are weapons of battle, and the upright ace indicates the courage to face obstacles and fight for what you believe. You're likely to emerge victorious from the struggles with a greater sense of personal identity. In the myth of Perseus and Medusa, the hero uses his strategic intelligence to outwit the snake-headed monster and chop off her head with his mighty sword. Sigmund Freud pointed out that the sword has long been a symbol of a powerful phallus. So when the Ace of Swords is reversed, this is going to warn about the misapplication of force, perhaps in the form of a quarrel or other forms of strife that can lead to separations in relationships. Be careful what you say, because words like swords can cause painful wounds. The reversed Ace of Swords can also indicate that you are expending your energy in a way that is inappropriate or not to your advantage. Oh, right, because we have a laurel here. Of course, we've talked about that. Symbolism is representative of victory. And we have the sword, which is, like we said, talking about cutting, a swiftness, and this is seemingly in the air, right, with these divine rays behind it. So we have that this is coming out of the blue, out of the sky energy, and this is a victorious action being taken with this card. Now, let's get into the Two of Swords. So as we've mentioned in other episodes with the numerology of 2, keep in mind that that's about choices, decisions, balance, duality, and partnerships. So with the Two of Swords, this is about masterful self-regulation and rapport. In the upright, the Two of Swords will suggest that your inner state is calm and finely balanced. You're able to review your options and take reasoned decisions against a backdrop of changing circumstances and varying emotions. If you've had differences with others, you can see the value in resolving the differences and burying your hatchet. This state of peace and self-possession characterizes the rapport you feel with your closest friends. True friendship is based on the tender, honest balancing of needs, wishes, and feelings of both parties. Now in the reverse, this is going to indicate some kind of imbalance that has disturbed your sense of self-possession. You may be at an impasse or unable to judge or decide on a correct course of action. Alternatively, you have an urge to act on an impulse without properly considering the consequences. Such superficial behavior will likely have negative consequences. There may be a disturbance in one or more of your friendships. Perhaps someone you considered a friend is involved in deceit or treachery, or you may be feeling tempted to lie to someone who trusts you. Interesting energy. Okay. Let's move on to the Three of Swords. This is probably one of the more challenging cards that you'll see in our reading. And you'll see it often. So the Three of Swords. Now remember, in the numerology, we talked about the 3 being connected to a triad, a joint venture. Something with the number 3 is all about an energy of creativity and fertility. So when we have this applied with the swords, we see separation and heartache. Now, when upright, this suggests that you're confronting some type of separation or a severing of ties. The suffering that will lead to important realizations about your emotional life and aid you to grow in wisdom. This card depicts stormy weather for the emotions. You may need to deal with feeling alienated, cut off, disappointed, grief-stricken, or alone. Because swords are a mental conflict-laden suit, You may be involved in disputes with friends or loved ones. A hoped for meeting with someone you care about may not materialize. Sometimes this card points to a need for surgery, either for yourself or for someone close to you. When all is said and done, the suffering and unhappiness implied by this card offer an opportunity for a fresh start. The reason why I say this card might be seen often in readings is because a lot of times people do use the tarot as a tool to help find clarity when they're feeling emotionally imbalanced. And when you're emotionally imbalanced, you tend to have conflict with others. So that's why I meant by this card comes out often in readings. Now, when this card is in the reverse, it says that the Three of Swords implies that you're not allowing yourself to grow as a result of your suffering. Rather than hanging on to hard feelings and keeping a dispute going, it may be time to bury the hatchet and clear the air. Clinging too long to chaos and sadness will only result in prolonged heartache. Consider the 5 stages of grief, which are 1. Denial and isolation, 2. Anger, 3. Bargaining, 4. Depression, and finally 5. Acceptance. The Three of Swords is about process of grieving and ultimately accepting and letting go in order to restore balance in your life. You gotta feel it to heal it in that situation, for sure. Now with the Four of Swords, again, the numerology of 4 is all about structure, stability, order, and logic. Now we put that with the Suit of Swords, and that represents the Solitude and Retreat card. When upright, the Four of Swords indicates a time of repose, healing, solitude, and recuperation. So note that the word Pax is in the angel's halo on the stained glass window. I don't see it on this card, but in the book it does say that. Maybe in the traditional Rider-Waite it shows that too. Anyways, it says perhaps you're recovering from illness or need a break from a stressful circumstance. In modern technological parlance, you may want to go off the grid for a while and recharge your batteries when the Four of Swords upright appears in a reading. Find your peace. It says after a period of rest and relaxation, you'll be able to begin anew. Traditionally, this card represents retreating to a meditative environment, such as a remote hermitage in the desert. Alright, now when this card appears reversed, definitely has a very different symbolism in this position. It says this warns of possible rejection or ostracism, which can leave you feeling lonely and abandoned. Sometimes feeling cut off in this way is self-imposed by your choice to withdraw from the involvement with others. The meditative isolation so much sought after by hermits may not be the oasis you were expecting. Okay, so now we went from that to the 5 of Swords. Now remember, the numerology of 5 talks about disruptions, instability, loss, and crisis, and tension and conflict. So we have this conflict and conflict energy. Now, the 5 of Swords talks about mourning a loss. It says when this card is upright, it indicates that you are dealing with some type of a loss, a defeat, or abandonment. There is an important spiritual lesson to be learned from this mournful experience. Sometimes this card indicates that you are the victor who is gloating over the triumph without regard for the feelings of those whom you've humiliated. Wow, that was a hard word to get out. Alternatively, you may be the loser who is feeling affronted, rejected, abandoned, or treated unfairly. Social science has demonstrated that experiences of humiliation can lead to feelings of anger and sometimes violence. But when this card is in the reverse, it's going to suggest that you've been licking your wounds for too long. The time has come to confront your sense of defeat and humiliation and see if there's a way to effect reconciliation. Wallowing in self-pity only prolongs your hurt feelings and your sense of inadequacy. Whoo! Yikes. Yeah, I had a feeling like this was going to be a struggling energy. You know, all's fair in love and war kind of stuff. Let's get into the six. The six, again, in numerology, is going to talk about sharing, compassion, and harmony. So, when we have that energy in the Suit of Swords, what does that give us? A bridge over troubled waters. When the Six of Swords upright appears in a reading, it indicates that you are moving away from troubling waters toward less turbulent circumstances with the aid of a strong and skillful oarsman. You are not there yet, and some residual difficulties remain on your journey. Conversely, you may be playing the role of the protective oarsman, helping someone to leave a problematic situation behind in search of a better life. The clever use of words may play an important role in your current situation. This is because Crowley named this card Science because of its connection with the mental planet Mercury in the objective sign of Aquarius. When the Six of Swords is in reverse, it's going to talk about having difficulty leaving your troubles behind. Something or someone is blocking your effort to make it more tranquil in your sea. Difficulties or delays with travel are also possible. It says perhaps because of the association of this card with the planet Mercury, which is communication, in Aquarius, traditional meanings of the Six of Swords reversed include declarations, revelations, and surprises. Now let's move into the Seven of Swords energy. 7 is about reevaluation, standing at a threshold, and seeking advantages. So assessment energy. Now with the swords, this is going to be talking about an unstable effort. Now the Seven of Swords upright urges careful planning and a strategic approach to resolving a delicate situation. Do your homework and set your goals carefully. It's best to avoid direct confrontation. Instead, try to find alternative solutions to any kind of conflict or disagreement. It says that stealth can give you an advantage, and you may wish to discuss matters with an expert consultant who can provide you with prudent counsel. Tact and diplomacy are definite assets in your current situation. With the Seven of Swords in reverse, it's going to talk about advising you to take reasonable precautions against theft, deception, or other types of underhanded behavior. Someone you thought you could trust may turn out to be a snake in the grass. Your timidity and indecisiveness may be contributing to muddled thinking and unstable efforts. You may wish to seek wise counsel to avoid chasing after rainbows or biting off more than you can chew. Wow. All right. Very interesting. And now we are on the 8 of Swords, the paralysis of analysis. Yeah, I'd say so. Look at this girl. 8 is about movement, action, and power. And do we see anything happening here in that card? No. Because it talks about that in this energy, you're feeling trapped or hemmed in by circumstances. Some of these restrictions may be of your own making, and others may be due to the interference of unforeseen events. You tend to overthink situations and inhibit yourself through limiting beliefs, excessive blame, or surrendering your power to others. You may be suffering from the paralysis of analysis. Now is the time to take off your blindfold and take a good look around you. Freedom is within your grasp, so consider the words of Richard Lovelace. Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. In the reversed, it has a similar meaning to upright, but it also implies that you're able to clear the obstacles in your path. The potential for liberation lies in confronting your limiting beliefs and replacing restrictive ideas with more realistic attitudes. If you have surrendered your power to others, it's time to take it back and resume control of your life. Wow, that's an empowering energy for sure. Now, one of the more difficult cards too that we see in the readings are the Nine of Swords. 9, again, is all about the final stage. It's about the culmination, attainment, and fruition. So with the swords, this is someone who's suffering from insomnia. It says that this card upright represents the anguish of the mind. Sometimes you feel so bad that you'd like to run off to a sheltered refuge and cloister yourself like a monk or a nun. Worrisome thoughts may be keeping you up at night or having a negative effect on your health. Perhaps you have felt the sting of harsh words from a loved one. Or you fear an impending split or separation in a relationship. Whatever is troubling you, just remember that matters look bleaker in anticipation and in the darkness of the night than when they actually manifest in tangible reality. So true. Your mind is the one that's torturing you more than the situation. Now, in the reverse, it says that this can indicate that you are avoiding or refusing to face up to your deepest fears. A well-known refrain from the self-help movement goes, what you resist persists, sorry. Acknowledge that you are worried and try to look at matters more clearly in the light of day. In the words of the Serenity Prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Wonderful. And lastly, we are at the 10 of Swords. And remember, the numerology of 10 is about a fullness of completion and the readiness to begin a new cycle. This is about the double digit sequence. So then we have a little bit one too many, right? Now with the Swords energy, it's pain and sorrow that give way to the morrow. When upright, this card indicates you have reached the end of a period of anguish and suffering, and you are ready to move on. You've hit rock bottom, and things cannot get any worse. It's one of those times in your life when you come to understand that you were never promised a rose garden. Circumstances are forcing you to confront a problem that has been brewing for some time, and the only way forward is up. The rising sun in the background implies that there is hope of a solution. You are drawn to a new day. Release and liberation from suffering are at hand. Since swords represent ideas and communication, problems created by misinformation can be resolved at this time. In the reverse, it suggests that something is preventing you from letting go of negative thoughts. Perhaps you might be following bad advice or engaging in catastrophe thinking. Perhaps you're clinging to a difficult relationship or a bad situation that has only brought you trouble in your life. You feel pinned down, but your worst imaginations do not match the reality of your circumstance. If you've been hurt or betrayed, you can either swim in the cesspool of anger and resentment or let go of the chaos and embrace forgiveness so you can move forward. Sometimes hitting bottom is a blessing in disguise as it forces you to finally deal with your problems. Wow. All right, my friends, that's what we have for the suits of swords, the ace through the 10. I hope this helped you and that you are able to get some guidance from these videos and that you learn something new about these cards that you didn't know. Feel free to drop a comment below if there's something I missed and there's some symbolism here that you think is really important to point out. And stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks, guys.